area model from problem 2.2 that we've done in class together. So first thing I'm going to do is draw my square. Okay, now if you remember, going back to the caves, right? When you start playing your game, you start, and what happens is you come to a three-way fork. So what you need to do first is divide up your area model into 3 equal sections. Okay, so assume that this, and this are all equal. Now, before we continue, think about what each piece is. This piece right here is 1/3 of the whole. This piece is also a third, and the bottom piece is also a third. Because if you remember from the previous lesson, the entire square represents 1. Okay, now I'm going to label this path 1, path 2, and path 3. You can do upper, middle, or lower path. Okay, so let's talk about path number 1. Going back to my game board, here is path 1. If I take path 1, I come to a two-way fork. Therefore, since I come to a two-way fork, I need to divide up path 1 into 2 equal parts. Okay, and I'm going to label this path 4 and path 5, just like the paths are labeled on your lap sheet. Now, going back to path 4. Okay, here's path 4. If I take path 4, I land in cave B. If I was to take this path, path 5, I land in cave A. So I'm going to label this B and label this one A. Now, going back to path 2, which is the middle path, if you take the middle path, it goes directly into cave A. So I'm going to label this whole middle path cave A. Okay, now, before we move on to path 3, let's talk about what fraction of the whole each piece is. Now, for this one, cave A, path 2 goes directly into cave A. Remember from the beginning, this is all 1/3. Okay? Now up here, the original first path was a third, and what happened was I divided it into 2 parts. So you want to take a third and divide it by 2. Okay, let's go over that again. This is a third, and I divided it into 2 pieces. So I want to do 1/3 divided by 2. Now 1/3 divided by 2 is the same thing as 1/3 divided by 2 over 1. Now how do I divide fractions? Well, you take your original fraction and you multiply it by the reciprocal of the second fraction. So flip this one, and then what you do is you multiply them. Well, how do we multiply fractions? Multiply the numerators. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 2 is 6. So therefore, each piece is 1/6. Now I'm going to use for cave B a different color, but each fraction, each piece up here is 1/6, because a third divided into 2 is equivalent to 1/6. Okay? Now let's go back to the third path. If we go back to the third path, which is the lower path, if I follow this path, I come again to a 3-way fork. So since it's a 3-way fork, I'm going to divide this piece into 3 equal sections. Okay? And I'm going to label it path 6, 7, and 8. I'm just labeling the paths to make it easier for me. So going back up here, here's path 6. Path 6 goes to cave A. Path 7 goes to B. And path 8 also goes to B. So I'm going to label that. This is A, B, B. Okay, so now we need to figure out each fraction for each piece. So remember, the original whole path 3 was 1/3. Okay? I divided it into 3 equal parts. Okay? Now remember, 3 is the same thing as 3 over 1. So now what I have to do is take my first fraction and I multiply it by the reciprocal of this, which means flip it. So it's 1/3 times 1/3. So I multiply 1 times 1 is 1. 3 times 3 is 9. So each of these is 1 over 9. I'm going to do the B's, cave B in pink, just to see the difference. Okay, so that's the hard part. We just completed the area model. So if I tell you to label your area model, this is exactly what it should look like. Now, we have to figure out the probability that you land in cave A and the probability that you land in cave B. Now, if you haven't noticed already, each section of our area model is not equivalent to another section. In the previous problems that we've done, all pieces that were divided up were all the same. So that's why we have to figure out each fraction. So to find the probability that you land in cave A, okay, we need to go back up to our area model. Well, this is cave A, 1/6 if you take path 1. We have a 3rd chance if you take path 2, and we have a 9th chance if you take path 3. So what you have to do is add them all up. So 1/6 plus 1/3 plus 1/9. Now, if you don't remember, you need a common denominator to add fractions. Well, in this case, my common denominator would be 18. The reason why my common denominator is 18 is because 9 goes into 18 evenly, 3 can go into 18 evenly, and 6 goes into 18 evenly. Okay? So 6 goes into 18 3 times. 3 times 1 is 3. 3 goes into 18 6 times, or think of it as 3 times what gives you 18. 3 times 6, so multiply this by 6. 1 times 6 is 6. In this fraction, 9 times 2 gives you 18. Therefore, multiply 1 times 2 and you get 2. So now, I have to add up these fractions. You don't add the denominators, it stays the same. 3 plus 6 is 9. 9 plus 2 is 11. So the probability that I land in cave A is 11 out of 18. So now we have to do cave B. Now, really, you don't even have to do any work, because if the probability that you land in A is 11 out of 18, the probability you land in B would be 7 out of 18, because your numerators, 11 and 7, have to add up to your denominator. But just for practice, we're going to actually figure out the probability of B. So going back up to the area model, okay, the fractions are in pink. So we have to do 1/6 plus 1/9 plus 1/9. So I have to add up 1/6 plus 1/9 plus 1/9. Okay? So look at your denominators. We have 6 and 9. So we need to find a common denominator, and again, it's going to be 18. 18 is the smallest common denominator. Okay? So now 6 goes into 18 3 times. 3 times 1 is 3. 9 goes into 18 twice. 2 times 1 is 2. Same thing here, 2. So again, add up just the numerators. 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. So there are my final answers. Probability of landing in cave A is 11 out of 18. Probability of landing in cave B is 7 out of 18. And you do not have to simplify them since you can't. So that's, once again, how to create the area model for the game board on page 24 from problem 2.2.